COVID-19 has affected everyone worldwide. How do they do their job? Did they get to keep their job? How do they educate their kids? How do they stay connected with friends and family? And above all else, how do they stay safe in a global pandemic? Each of us has our own story. I'm James Moore, and I'm a cancer survivor. I have a compromised immune system that's highly susceptible to COVID-19. I've sheltered in place since mid-March. And in order to not go stir crazy, I've used Zoom to get together with friends and family over coffee and talk about the daily news, or laugh together with cocktails and virtual happy hour. But that's just my story. I've invited a few here to tell their stories. Thank you, Molly, for joining me this evening and spending some time with me. COVID has affected so many people around the world, and what we're trying to do is just hear the stories. Can you tell me how COVID has actually affected you?
Sure. Back when we first all went into quarantine per the governor's order, I am a state employee, and I've been a state employee for a little over almost 2 years now. There was no telework policy for the state of California, believe it or not. So we all retreated to our homes. We took equipment that we could. My role is very data driven, and it's very analytical. In addition to that, I also own a consulting business, which I've come to learn from my children is called a side hustle. So I'm running both businesses, a full-time job and side hustle. But the challenge was to prove to the powers that be for the state of California that you can still do your job remotely.
Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you giving some time to this project. We're talking about COVID. COVID's been going on for a while now. How has that affected you?
Well, I think COVID's affected me in multiple ways, not just personal life, professional life, goals in the future, as well as my academic journey right now. Just to give some background, I currently work for the state of California. I work for the San Francisco State University. I work with new students. So what that looked like for us was having to pretty much transition 4,000 people who expected to be on a new campus to a remote learning experience. So first and foremost, I think with COVID, it pretty much flipped a lot of my world in this sort of 180 kind of a coin.
Tim, thank you for joining today to talk to me about COVID-19 and basically how it's affected you. So let's start off. How has it affected you?
I had 8 months of living hell, being in a front-end manager of a grocery store. Since March 1st, when everything started shutting down, and we were inundated by panic buying, anything and everything. I had never seen the store that empty because we could not supply it fast enough.
So, Angela, thank you so much for joining me today and talking with me about the situation that we have with COVID-19. So the question that I put to you, how has that affected you?
In an odd way, when it first started as an artist, you tend to be a solitary creature. I mean, I have a studio, I worked in my studio, I did what I had to do. As a writer, I sit down, I write, and even now with the script writing, I may collaborate with somebody, but it's always done electronically. So for the first couple of weeks, there was no tremendous impact because it was only going to be 2 weeks. And that 2 weeks just kept extending and extending and extending. And what I found was I no longer wanted to go in my studio. And in fact, I ended up storing things in my studio because I felt like it was useless in a way, that whatever I was creating was living in a void.
So first off, Jacqueline, thank you so much for being a part of this today. COVID's been around for a while now, and here in the US, we've been in lockdown since March on some sort of level. Can you tell me how COVID and that lockdown has affected you and what it is you're doing?
For me, COVID has been a huge part of my life. I'm in the entertainment industry, in the event industry, and obviously our job is to have large crowds, which is the one thing that we shouldn't have right now. So we have had to change and pivot and do all sorts of things in terms of what we do on a daily basis, and basically to some degree shut down.
Amelia, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you taking time out. This project I'm working on is about the stories of how people have been affected, and COVID-19 in some way, shape, or form has affected all of us. But for you, how did it affect you?
So I work in a fine dining restaurant in Cupertino, Alexander's. I went to work I believe it was a Friday. I went to work. There was a lot of talk of, oh gosh, we're going to have to start wearing masks and gloves. And at that point, there was a case that had been someone across the way at a different restaurant had gotten sick with the COVID-19. So we were worried that not that it was going to close, but that it was going to be a lot slower, and that we were going to lose a fraction of our income. Come Monday, we get an email saying we're no longer employed, our insurance is no longer going, basically like a termination notice, and that we will have to be, when this is all said and done, we'll have to apply to be rehired.
Thank you, Geronimo, for joining me today. Can you tell me, in your own words, what it's like to have to deal with the COVID-19 situation?
Okay, so from a personal perspective, just the non-business owner perspective, the personal perspective, it's been a challenge. My two senior parents, so they're both in their 70s, live with my husband and I. And so we've had to be extremely careful about our contact with other people for fear of infecting them. On top of, both of us have pre-existing conditions that make us much more susceptible to COVID. So Mark is immune compromised, and I am overweight, diabetic, and have had a heart condition, which are the top three comorbidities for COVID.
Kathleen, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time. And we're here talking about COVID-19 and how it's affected us, all of us, globally. And you being in another country may have a different perspective, may have had a different experience. But if you could just tell us what has affected you through this entire COVID-19 pandemic.
Absolutely. So you're right. So I do live in Canada. And when things really started to kind of like hit and happen, you're hearing all the different stories and so forth. I remember thinking first, about my daughter, like, how is that going to affect her? What does that look like for school? I'm very fortunate from a work perspective. I already got to work from home 3 days out of the week. And I remember early stages, I was at a meeting and they said, take a really good look around the room because the odds are you're not going to see each other for quite some time.
Kelly, thank you for joining me today and talking to me about COVID. You're a healthcare professional. You are on the front lines right now. Can you tell me what that's like to have to deal with COVID-19 and how it's affected you?
Absolutely. So I am a registered nurse. I work on an adult surgical oncology floor. So I work mostly with cancer patients. So as far as COVID goes, what that means for me in my unit is that luckily I don't directly work with COVID positive patients because my patient population is filled with immunocompromised people. And luckily, our hospital made a very smart decision and said, we're going to divert any COVID patients far away from your unit.
Sandra, thank you so much for joining me today and chatting with me about this whole COVID pandemic that the world's in the middle of. So could you tell me how COVID-19 has affected you?
Sure. So there's, outside of the obvious, there are work issues. I'm an outside salesperson. So I have now pivoted, as has my company, to do all of our interactions virtually, remotely. But being a California native and moving to Kentucky 3 years ago, we find ourselves facing some cultural issues that we had not anticipated when we moved here.
I just didn't feel connected to anything.
And so what did that look like? Okay, how am I going to manage school with my daughter? Being a single parent, you're kind of wearing so many different hats as it is, right? And so what was that going to look like? And then also, like, how do I explain this to my daughter? You can't go out and play with your friends anymore. It's very different. Like we had, and I remember early stages too, when some of our friends were still knocking on the door, and I just made the decision. I said, there's so much we don't know. I just said, can't.
And of course, you're scared and you're worried. Am I going to get sick? Are all these things that we're doing actually useful? I have 2 daughters at home. One was impacted as a student at a local college where she lived on campus. Complete removal from school, everything done online. She's still, she's a junior now, a sophomore now, and she's still online. My older daughter, who works for a beauty products company, has gone through so many changes in her role because people couldn't do the jobs that they need to do on top of having to work remotely. So we were all impacted in a way, not just personally, but also in our school or work life.
Like from those very first days, it affected what you were doing for your employment.
Yes, very much so.
How did that, what was your initial feeling to that?
Scared. I was scared. People were just panicking. And it was scary to watch it in a public place.
Our economy should be open and that masks are not necessary, and that even if you do catch it, it's like a cold. You catch it, you get over it, and you move on. And the older generation, who, like myself, who has thought about once or twice maybe what's going to happen to us as we age and being more careful and being more cautious, we are certainly paying attention, but I'm finding that the younger generation is feeling quite immune to all of this, which has really hit home personally for me.
And so we were working remote, and I was kind of struggling with this self-isolation. I'm a very social person. I've been diagnosed with clinical depression since I was 16. And one thing my therapist always says is, she's like, you are a sham wow of energy, right? The energy around you is what you absorb. And there's no energy around me. It's just me and my partner in the house. And that's something I really struggled with my mental health, because my professional environment changed drastically overnight.
We are, of course, still affected. We have lots of different policies and protocols that we've been needing to follow, and they change on a weekly basis just based off of more research information that we're receiving from the CDC and other guidelines from our higher ups, our management, our CNO, everybody at the hospital. And we're doing our own research at OHSU as well. I work at OHSU in Portland, Oregon. But it's been really tough.
I work at an arena, and unfortunately we cannot have concerts, we cannot have theatrical events, we cannot have meetings, we cannot have industry or trade shows. Everything that we have done and do on a regular daily basis multiple times, not happening at all.
So we all applied for unemployment. I was sitting there thinking a week, 2 weeks, the 14-day, 28 days at best to let this thing pass. And then literally 8 months later, I returned back to work.
So it's really altered our lives quite a bit, on the personal front. So we just don't go out. We don't visit with people. We really just go back and forth to work. And it's just basically for the last, 8 months, been pretty much just Mark and I with a very, very, very small circle of friends who we have infrequent interaction with.
So that went on until about the end of August. And unfortunately, we thought, as many others, were starting to get the COVID exhaustion, that we could attend an event outside the house. And up until this time, we weren't really seeing family. We weren't, doing a whole lot, actually doing nothing outside of the house. But we were invited to a very good family friend's outdoor wedding in the evening. And of course, masks were required. And we attended this wedding, and the three of us who followed all the rules and did everything right somehow caught COVID at this wedding.
It still wasn't quite right. It wasn't about selling your art or sharing your art. There was just something about living by yourself, that confinement. And it really it just started to wreak havoc. I couldn't sleep. I was awake. I was finding myself furiously writing in a journal. And, I got good seeds from that, to go forward to work on other projects. But it's been very stifling in a way.
You've got big staffs having an arena. You've got the concessions, you've got ushers, you've got ticket agents, you have all of that stuff. Are they just not working?
Not for us. No, unfortunately not.
Even though the unemployment was good money, it's still just that insecure feeling where you don't have any control. It's amazing how that affects a person,
From a business perspective, COVID hit at the worst possible time for us, because usually for bookstores, the slowest time of year for our particular type of retail is the first quarter, right? So January, February, and March are really, really tough months for us, right? And oftentimes we're having to supplement the store's income with money that we've saved in order to be able to just make rent and, pay for utilities. And so COVID was really, really scary for us initially.
We are very severely shortly staffed because we have such a strict protocol on coming to work with any sort of symptoms, cold, sore, runny nose, all kinds of things. We can't come to work, and so we are just so short-staffed because of it. And the patients are just so sick because we're only allowing the sickest of the sick in right now in order to try to keep beds open for the COVID patients coming to other units.
Moving here from California to Kentucky, with family being here, we had assumed there would be this, just smooth transition of, hey, holidays and lifestyle, and now geographically, because we're closer, we are going to be able to rebuild our relationship, because we had that distance, which did make it challenging. Well, here comes COVID, here comes the pandemic, and I've got family that are in the younger generation, and they, like their environment, are not necessarily taking the pandemic seriously.
I think the biggest change, and there's actually been some recent developments in how COVID has kind of affected me personally, but I received a layoff notice from the state of California on September 8th. They gave us 60 days and said, you know, by November 8th, you will be out of a job. And I just spent the past 6 months transitioning new students and you know, getting them signed up for courses and getting them excited to go here. And then the next thing you know, I'm losing my job after spending months of dedicating time to enrolling new students when our enrollment numbers dropped drastically.
This pandemic isn't about this country or that country or anything else. It's about each and every one of us being able to navigate through this. And you got deemed an essential worker. So now suddenly you're being almost, I won't say forced to work,
Right.
but you needed to be there. We needed groceries. We needed stuff that wasn't on your shelves.
Exactly.
So were there instances where the customers were not behaving well?
Oh, yes. We still have it.
That's so unfortunate.
I know. We're just trying to help them, and they've got to be rude. You know, and then on Friday, we ran out of pumpkins, carving pumpkins.
It's Halloween.
It's Halloween. They were coming in yesterday. Do you have any more pumpkins? No. I'm sure you got some in the back. I said, no.
So, you know, having been a cancer patient, I get the whole immunocompromised issue, which scares me to death to be out in this stuff right now. How does that affect the patients that you're seeing? Since are they allowed to have visitors? Do outsiders come in and actually sit with them?
Yeah, so at the very beginning, the hospital shut down all visitors. Nobody was allowed to come in, with the only exception being if a patient was in hospice, they could have family members at their side for end of life, and for like newborn babies and labor and delivery. Those were some of the only, I guess, things that would be allowed for visitors. Now they allow one visitor for our patients. It has to be the same person for the entire hospitalization. And they try to say, don't leave the unit unless you absolutely have to.
Shame on you. You went to an event. You shouldn't have gone. But of course, thinking that here we are, we're doing everything right. We've been doing everything right. We're going to be fine. And we honestly believe that.
We feel like we are at risk. You know, I'm in that age group that is now considered elderly. Is that what they say? Anybody over 50 is elderly, I think. And we have actually had to adapt our lifestyle to not include family during this time. And it's been a little sad. It's been a little isolating.
I believe, you know, as an individual and as an artist and so many other things in my life, I value free speech. And I felt like free speech was being taken away from me. I don't care who you vote for. I don't care who you sleep with. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care. It's not my personal business. I have to respect the fact that you do whatever you do, just like you have to respect what I do. And I felt that that was getting lost. And I felt as an artist, that voice was being crushed again.
And this is when the testing had just really started to be more widespread, more open. So I went to Cal Expo and I drove through a maze of pylons and borders and barriers, and the place was run by the Army Corps of Engineers. So I felt completely dystopic, and it was as if I was a bad person and I was being punished. And they were saying, go here and do this and stop your car and turn off your gas and wear your mask and here's your number and hold it up and don't open your windows.
So let me swing this to another piece.
Okay.
I have a compromised immune system. I'm a cancer survivor. I am scared to death to step out in public. I have isolated to the point where I have not been social or out around people since March.
Mm-hmm.
You're out in that public every time you go to work. How does that make you feel?
I I don't know. I mean, I just had to dig my heels in and just do it.
So it's
Basically,
kind
it
of
was,
pull up the bootstraps and get the job done.
yeah, yeah. That's how I had to look at the whole thing. Is it's you got to be there.
And it was a little bit of a struggle. So I found myself, as I said, going back to playing with photography, going back to designing jewelry. I found myself knitting. Everybody I know now has a quilt or a sweater. You know, it's like boom, 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 boom. It was still that feeling that you lost something.
I have my mother-in-law is advanced in years. She has a lot of pre-existing conditions, and she's the one I worry about the most. How do we keep her safe? And she moves from daughter to daughter to daughter's house, and each daughter has a different lifestyle, and I know she has exposures at each of these places. We're working. I'm have family members who get it and don't get it, and there doesn't seem to be any sort of checkbox here that we can, or list that we can check off and say, well, we're doing this, this, and this, and we're going to be fine. There isn't. I mean, I thought I was doing everything fine, and I still got it.
My family were very tight as it is. And then we just figured out, how do we now manage this? So doing a lot of Zoom calls, and we'd made sure that was a conscious effort that once a week as a family, we were all on the Zoom call, doing, checking in with one another. How's everybody doing, kind of thing. I'm fortunate enough, I still have both of my parents, but they're older. So again, knowing that we couldn't see them. And I remember there was one day Madison's like, Mom, why don't, because people were doing different things for birthdays. You'd drive by honking horns and you'd have these different signs. She goes, what if we make a sign for Nanny and Papa? And so we did that. We went by their place. We had the big sign. They were waving out the window. And I'm like, well, we could touch on and help other people not feel so isolated. So my very best friend, she lives with her mom. Unfortunately, she has actually passed during COVID. But prior to that, Madison's like, well, let's go drop over there. So I told her, come pop outside with her and her mom was crying because we had this sign out saying we love you, please be safe. And different, certainly going through all these new changes, but I also saw a really good side of how we could touch on so many people's lives.
My birthday party was on Zoom. My best friend's birthday party was on Zoom.
I went to a baby shower.
Right. Right?
I
went weddings. I've seen weddings. I think for me it's been really hard to it's been hard to navigate because it is this only tool for socialization. But it's also where I work, where I go to school on Zoom, and it's my only tool to socialize. It's like, oh my gosh, it's exhausting, but I'm grateful for it. It's a very strange mix of emotions around Zoom, but I think for us it was, really in the beginning it was around, all right, we need to keep this sense of community going, and if we got to do it on Zoom, then we got to do it on Zoom.
I did enjoy the time extra with the kids because I have 2 little ones at home, and it was kind of a blessing in disguise to have that time.
The only thing that really came out of it that was beneficial was that we learned that we could put all of our inventory online from our vendor who provides the inventory tracking system that we use. So we were able to turn on our inventory online, and so we saw an immediate boost in sales from our online marketplaces, which sort of stabilized the store. So in a lot of ways, that was a positive. Because
has your local government, your company, given any indication that where you're at right now is going to change anytime soon?
It's a day by day for us. We're in a unique position because I'm technically employed by what is considered a technology company that happens to be in the event industry. We have used this time to pivot and focus very heavily on developing software and developing best practices and other options to be used for our clients. And we have seen increases in some schools have been able to hold limited events.
You've got somebody at home to take comfort with. You've got your pets. You've got your school. There's a lot of people out there that have never been this isolated before, even in their own family. All these people who were in bad relationships or in domestic violence situations, or who were recovering addicts. This is although we've been doing this since March, this is the stuff I still think about, because I don't know if it's been addressed as it should be by a voice that is strong and firm and kind and comforting, and can really fill in that void, whether you've been sick or not, can really fill that void of, yeah, I really feel like we're going to be okay. Dr. Fauci the other day said, we're in for a lot of hurt.
How much stress do you feel as you're going in to do your job? Because that's a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm. Very stressful.
Very stressful.
I mean, I've developed chronic vertigo through all this. And I used to have minor things would go like this. Now the whole room is going like this. And right before I go in, I have an attack, and I have to just tell myself, stop. It's going to be all right.
Because I'm fond of saying we're all born artists. That's my tagline. That little guy comes out and is like, I'm here. And you sit there with a box of crayons and you do something.
So during the time, like they let you go back in March, it's now the first part of November, right? So we're talking 8 months almost,
8 months.
Right? How was the restaurant doing curbside during that time?
They were doing to-goes and essential packages. I have to give it to the Alexander's restaurant group. They really thought outside the box. They were doing really all sorts of different packages. They were doing all the different DoorDash and Uber and all that stuff. So they really thought outside of the box and like adapted quickly to keep their head above water. And they did, thank God, because now we all have a job to go back to, which we're very grateful for.
Kelly, is there anything else that you feel you want to be told of this whole COVID experience you've gone through?
I don't know. I just, I look around at everybody who's going out and partying, and I know it's really, we all really want to get out there, but it's just so hard for me to watch other people do that when, we're struggling in the hospitals. And I just wish people could look inside our units and our COVID units and see what's really happening and just understand and like do their part. I know it's hard, and I know we've been doing it for a very long time. But we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and it's just getting worse day by day. And I just want to put that out there.
Stay home if you can. We've got the holidays coming up. That's really impactful. I myself, I'm going out and buying a turkey, and that's it.
And here we have a holiday coming up, and it's going to be very interesting to have to deal with saying to somebody, yes, it's a holiday. Yes, we're not working. Yes, we're going to be home, but no, you can't come over.
I was just going to say that. It's kind of weird when we have this global pandemic
Right.
that has us with the numbers of cases and deaths that we have.
Yeah.
Yet silver linings seem to get found.
I say the biggest one for me, I think, when I think of silver linings in COVID was like, I was moving to San Jose, but working in San Francisco. I was going to be commuting 45 miles in the direction of the worst traffic. I haven't had to commute once. I've saved hundreds of dollars on gas. I've saved hours a day on commuting, where I can now spend it dedicated to, that gives me an extra hour and a half, 2 hours to read for my program, for my master's program, as opposed to just sitting in a car on 280. So it's these weird silver linings like that, I think, that I've kind of tried to grasp onto, of like, oh wow, I don't have to commute an hour and a half each way from San Jose in the worst rush hour traffic. I don't have to spend on gas money. It's odd to say that there are those silver linings in those moments, but there are. Yeah.
I just want it to be over with. Somehow, some way, there's got to be something we can do.
That everyone, you hope that we all play a part.
Yeah.
And you literally are living that part right now. You're checking in and giving them symptoms. You're giving them updates on you, and you're literally playing a part in what will be the future protocol that healthcare follows. How does that feel? Because when I was a cancer patient, right, I was in an experimental program. There were no guarantees that I was going to be healed from, playing a guinea pig. And that's exactly how I called it. And I know that there's an emotional toll that I went through being that.
Sure.
How does that feel for you, that you're playing that part, that you're key to all of the testing that's going on?
When I first signed up to take the test, I knew this company, I knew what they did. And that's why I chose the testing site. That's why I chose that process, because I knew that they were on that path. They were providing those services, not just to us as patients, but to the medical community, to science, what have you. And although at the time I felt really icky and awful, I thought, I can do this. I just feel like I needed to, stay connected somehow, stay like this is real. At that time, I didn't have a doctor I was going to regularly. I didn't want to wait in line at the ER or the hospital. So this was an option. And then they provided a framework where you could report in. So once I did that, these people were very, very professional, very kind. Every interaction I have with them, whether it's just strictly online or there's an online chat, it's always the concern about me. And then they guide you through all these questions. My God, it's the same questions every week, but I'm answering pretty much the same way every week. So you can see there is a history there.
It's hard to try to cheer up everybody when you yourself have kind of got that kind of feeling. But like I said, that little guy that was in you when you were a kid and they had that first crayon and wrote on the wall until you got yelled at comes out, because what you are as an artist is incredibly important in a much broader scale than you realize. You have no idea what impact you're going to have with a word, a poem, a photograph, a painting. Artists are very important, and they're very reflective of what's going on, and they're very needed. And that's the thing people have to realize, is that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We have to believe that, but to suppress the arts is not the way to do that.
My daughter's absolutely amazed me through this process as well. I remember first going, okay, Madison, like, we're at the grocery store. I know, Mom, because I would have the same speech going in. She's like, and I get it. And she's adapted quite well, I have to say. Like, there was never an issue of, oh, I have to wear a mask. Like, that was never an issue. Like, I think she's got an old soul. I think she gets certain things that there's a certain maturity about her where there's the other fun side, but when it comes to certain things, she just really, she can jump on board. She gets her head wrapped around it. And I also think, you know, growing up, we were taught the same thing. Like whatever we have to face, we do it together as a family. So I've always said that to Madison, like whatever we have to face, we will absolutely get through this, but we're going to do it together. Right. And so whatever that looks like, but it's just, you know, you just have to adapt. I know we don't like it. We all want this to be done because we want to go back outside. We want to go and enjoy things. We want to visit our friends, right? I want to be on a plane again. Those are things that I'm just not ready to do at certain points, you know, going through this process. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of doing the best that you can with what you've got and trying to make it fun.
So Jacqueline, is there anything else that you might want to put into this conversation that I haven't brought up or that you had a chance to say?
I think one of the realizations that we've all come to is how much the entertainment industry or the event industry actually plays a role in our lives, whether it be from attending a concert to attending a trade show to attending workshops and seminars that our work has put on at the local convention center. It truly has opened my eyes as much as I'm in it every day as to how much we actually do and how much this has affected what we do.
When we were able to start doing curbside pickup, most of our customers use our online stores to sort of hunt and peck for what it is that they want. And then they call us and then they place an order and then they come and pick it up here, right? So they avoid the postage fee and we avoid having to pay the fee that we would pay, you know, essentially a finder's fee that we pay to Amazon and A Books, right? So it's a win-win for everybody, right? So they get to see the inventory. They basically get to shop the store from the safety of their home.
I appreciate your time today. Is there anything else that you think you need to say that I may have not gotten out of you at this point?
Just be kind to your servers. They're putting themselves out there.
Oh, I love that.
But people are. There's some good people around.
That's nice.
They really are.
Amelia, thank you so much.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
We know, you know, like you mentioned, you're in an environment there in Kentucky that is different, you know, ideologically to other places, but that isn't unheard of in places like Washington, like California, like New York, right? There's a whole contingency of people that have that mindset that this is just going to go away. Do you think it's going to go away?
No. And you know, it's not expected to go away. It is not rational to think it will go away.
This is so new and so different. It isn't just a virus and a vaccine, it's a way of life. And that's why a lot of people are fighting so hard. You are being incredibly brave and taking care of yourself. But can you imagine all the people that aren't doing what you're doing, who are already at risk for whatever? They're smokers, they're drinkers, they're addicts, they have high blood pressure, they are obese, they have a medical history that lowers their immune system, those with lupus or MS, and are not taking this seriously.
As we continue forward, we're obviously not out of it yet, but as we continue and find the next steps and the new world, right? The new office environment, right. Do you see it going back to the old way? Or do you think there may be a point where these lessons learned, these positives from a productive standpoint, may be implemented in that new design of how work operates?
I think we are going to see a huge transition in our workforce because we kind of were able to prove to ourselves that there is a different way than what we were doing before. So I just can't imagine that people like myself and you and folks who have been in and out of the workforce our entire lives and kind of seen interesting transitions, this is the most, I mean, just transitional period this country globe has probably ever seen since the 1918 pandemic. So I think I can't imagine we'd go back to the way it was. And I think, using again myself as an example, this whole process of like transferring orientation online literally says to us, we're now going to have an online orientation forever at SF State, in addition to this on campus. So that's already the easiest thing that I can say, that is already a change from before, right? I can't imagine people won't advocate for themselves after this experience and say, you know, there is a different way. There is a different way, and we did it.
I created a soapbox and a platform. I'm going back behind me as a vocal booth. I'm going back to podcasting. I'm going to make that noise, because not that I'm the most brilliant thing or what I have to say is the most entrenching, but I think it's important that, like what you're doing, we express ourselves and we let people know. And artists can give you hope, artists can bring you tears, artists can bring you all kinds of things, but ultimately they bring you truth. And I think that that's the thing that I have to keep in my head, to know that there's a truth there. And it's hard. This is hard. I'm 62 years old, man. I never thought I'd be doing this crap. And it's very difficult.
So I don't know. I feel like it's for the greater good. I would love to be involved. I'm happy I'm doing this. It gives me something else to shoot for on the other side.
First, I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. I think what you're doing is amazing. And I think exactly what you just, what you had just said, as long as we're all thinking not only of just, what's happening with ourselves, but with other people, if we all do the right things, we'll get through this together, but we'll also get through it faster. I think that there's an end in sight, vaccine, whatever that looks like, but we have to work together to get there. Otherwise it either will really prolong it, or who knows.
Artists are very important, and they're very reflective of what's going on, and they're very needed. And that's the thing people have to realize, is that there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Is there anything else that you want to leave kind of as a parting comment?
Love yourself. Love those who are near you. Check in with people. Make sure that if you have something you think you need to say it to whomever you have to say it to. Participate in life as much as you can, and as a safe. Social media, texting, letter writing, pen pals. Stay hydrated, take your vitamins, get some fitness, meditate. All of these are like cogs in the wheel of how we're all faced now with we have to really take good care of ourselves, inside out, all the points. And you cannot expect this to end overnight. It will not. And just be kind to yourself, honest to God. There's days when I just say, I'm done. I'm just going to sit on the couch and let this fatigue pass, let the cough pass, let the fever pass. There's absolutely nothing that I have to do that requires as much effort as getting healthy again.
Well,
and wear your mask. Damn it.
I do wish you healthy, and I will hold
Thank
you in
you.
my heart. And
Thank you. Likewise.
I really do appreciate you taking the time.
It's my pleasure, James.